Hey guys, this is Tom Box. Okay, so before we jump into today's episode, I have a question for you guys. Have you guys ever had that feeling where after you lose a game, Tom Box, I never lose games. Well, congratulations to you. But if you have ever lost a game and then you walk away from the table and then you realize, hey, wait a minute, I couldn't have lost that game. There was a game state that was not maintained, and there's no way I could have taken that much damage, or that summon was impossible. I demand an appeal. I am going to file an appeal to the Supreme Court and get rejected because you already signed the slip, buddy. You can't, go back on the game that you've already lost because once you sign the slip, it's kind of accepted game state. And that's what we're here to prevent here today. So smash that thumbs up button if you guys have felt that scenario. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about Sky Striker and Drytrons, mainly these two matchups because there's a lot of stuff to maintain. I mean, every deck in the current meta, I would say, have lots of crap to maintain. And if you don't, it's just to your disadvantage because it's not every game that you're going to have a judge there to help you maintain or actively judge in your table to kind of give you, the heads up. So I'm just going to drill a bunch of game state maintenance stuff for Drytrons and Sky Striker into your head so that you don't fall for such garbage. All right, let's begin. Okay, the number one most common Drytron chat versus Sky Striker is Shizuku versus Meteonis Drytron. Well, that particular card, the ritual spell, remember, uses the attack points to perform the ritual summon requirement. And Shizuku reduces your monster's attack by 100 times the number of spells in the graveyard. You see where I'm going with this? People are forgetting. Remember, typically Drytron do have well-rounded numbers. I mean, ultimateness is an easy 2000 to 2000 trade for that summon. However, once you reduce it by even 100, that trade is no longer allowed. So you can't just use a Drytron body on the field and just do an immediate trade. That doesn't happen, and that is something that I see a lot of. Like, even sitting on a Shizuku isn't that bad. You're gonna see like Sky Striker players sit on a Shizuku all day every day because end phase search, it's going to be the most common monster that they pass on turn one. So even on the turn one, if they activated a single spell card, it already hinders you from using that. However, people are like, well, it's not really that big of a deal, especially when you have Mu Beta. It's true. When you have Mu Beta on the field, since the Xyz material do not count towards monsters being on the field, and you can use them as, the material for your ritual summon, in that particular case, all the materials do not have their attacks altered and their stats basically remain the same. Even if Zombie World was on the field, those materials attached to Mu Beta, they are still technically machines because they're not on the field for one thing. They're not in the graveyard. They're just Xyz material. And since you can use them as monsters, they are still technically machines with 2000 and 2000 attack. So with that in mind, you can still use that as a way of bypassing against Shizuku. And that's why the Drytron Mu Beta material are just that much more important. And typically, remember, if your Mu Beta gets negated and you've activated Meteonis Drytron to ritual summon, and you have no other way to ritual summon, you're going to have to send the entire package into the graveyard because the continuous effect is now no longer applying. All right, so that's just something to keep in mind, a very common thing that people tend to forget. But luckily, Mu Beta, it is one of those cards that lets you bypass that attack reduction that kind of screws over your numbers. Oh, quick little pop quiz, guys. Now, I asked you guys on Twitter last month, hey, can you actually pay life points till you die? And by that, here's the example question. If you have Imperial Order and you have exactly 700 life points left and it goes to the standby phase, do you A, pay the 700 life points and go to 0 life points and lose the game, or B, the card will destroy itself because you can't lose the game by paying life points? And the answer is you pay life points till you die. The only way you cannot pay life points till you die is that you don't have enough life points. If you have 699 life points, you don't have enough to pay, then the cost cannot be paid. The card will be destroyed by mechanic. Oh, seems simple enough. But if you do have enough, exactly enough life points, you will still pay the exact amount because, well, Imperial Order is mandatory, and you will lose the duel. So, yes, keep that in mind, guys. Yeah, apparently, close to 70% of you guys already knew about that, but the other 30%, well, we can all work on it. Ruling number 2, this one has come up time and time again, and it's an argument that I see in my own comment section, so I'm going to address it right now. this is going to be Ghost Belle versus Drytron monsters in the hand. You can't use Ghost Belle on those ones in the hand. Okay, I'm reading the card text of Drytron Alpha right now, or rather the part where they get to summon themselves out. You contribute one other Drytron monster or ritual monster from your hand or field, and that's the cost. Special summon this card from your hand or graveyard in defense position. And they're like, haha, checkmate, Tombox. It says or graveyard, so therefore it includes the graveyard, and therefore you can use Belle on it. And I say no, because this is something that they check basically during activation. Because if you activate it in the hand, it can only summon from the hand. If you activate it in the graveyard, it can only summon in the graveyard. Your counter argument typically goes, well, Ash Blossom can negate, Shaddoll Fusion at all times, because the difference is that Shaddoll Fusion checks during resolution. There's nothing really to check for the Drytron monster activating, because the moment it activates in the hand, and if you put that card into the graveyard, say you Mind Crush it or something along those lines, will that same Drytron card summon from the graveyard? No, it just tells you where this card can activate from, and depending on where it activates from, it determines whether or not you can actually use the Ghost Belle. If it activates in the graveyard, then 100% yes, because it completely fulfills the condition where it's activating from the graveyard to summon itself from the graveyard. Where if it activates from the hand, it only summons from the hand, and that's why this is during activation. It already confirms a guaranteed notion whether or not it can happen. Well, Shaddoll Fusion, if there's nothing on the field, then it's guaranteed that there won't be a fusion or an extra deck monster on the field. That is not true, because you can mid-chain, an L Shaddoll Fusion, you can mid-chain Super Poly to put something onto the field, and then when it checks, it's going to work. Yeah, so then you will be able to send stuff from the deck. In other words, there's no guarantee that you won't be able to use the send to the grave effect, and that's why checking during resolution and checking during the activation, two completely separate things. In fact, if you want to compare Ash Blossom, the best thing to really compare it with is a co-linked Nightmare monster. If a Nightmare monster is not co-linked, you will never be able to throw an Ash Blossom on it to negate it, because it includes a draw card effect. But if it's not co-linked, then you can't Ash. But if it is co-linked on the activation, you can Ash it regardless if they were going to draw a card or not, because now it's included as a part of its card effect. And that is a more closely, I guess, related example to this particular case, is because at the activation, it has already determined whether or not the part of the card effect is inclusive or not. Quick little intermission. If you guys want to help support this channel, you can check it out with the Patreon link down in the description. But if that's not your fancy, you want to get something out of it, well, check out MST.TV, where we have foil sleeves. In fact, we have new sleeves coming in very soon, so stay tuned for that. We also have, of course, the famous box divider to help you sort your collection, and there's also mats available. But there's new stuff coming up very soon. I've been working on that project for some time now. We've got some tournament level sleeves. We have orange foil sleeves coming in very hot, by popular demand, so that one's gonna be one of the hottest ones out there. And we also even have some apparel, hats and shirts, and stay tuned for that. Well, check out MST.TV, and let's go back to the rules. Fun fact, I did a pop quiz for you guys on Ghost Belle. I put in the quote, you can discard this card, semicolon, negate the blank. What is the blank? 30% of you guys said negate the effect, where you guys are wrong, and 69% of you guys got it right. Nice. Which is negates the activation. That's why you can use it during the damage step to stop Ray from coming back from the graveyard, opening the board for you to just push for aggression, keep the pressure on, go for game. That's why it is very important to know that significant difference. All right, guys, and just be careful when you use this card, because if you do negate the activation of something, it also means that you can get hit by Witch's Strike, and yeah, that's a very scary card that I do not want to be on the receiving end of. One more card effect ruling to talk about before we burn into Sky Striker. The number one thing to talk into is Lina versus the Drytron restriction. Just remember, Lina can special summon out a light monster out of your opponent's graveyard. This is the Link monster Lina. But keep in mind the Drytron restriction is for the entire turn, not, it doesn't lock you in after you activate a Drytron monster. It's for the entire turn. So if you revive a monster like Effect Veiler, which is one of the most common ones I've seen, you lock yourself out of all the Drytrons. If you already summoned out a Drytron, then you can't bring back that Effect Veiler. It's really that simple, but it's also quite easy to forget, especially in a game state where you exchange like multiple hand traps, which force you into the line of play, and when you're reading the card, you forgot about the gameplay maintenance, the game state that you're currently in, and you revive a card illegally, which in turn basically breaks the entire game state. Luckily, this is usually just a PE minor, that shouldn't be an issue, but you will turn it into an irreparable game state once you pass turn and keep the monster and play a couple extra turns, draw cards, and alter your moves. That basically becomes an irreparable game state at that point. You can try to revert it, but if there are certain private knowledge cards that have been revealed already, then you're kind of in, deep water there. I don't think it's repairable, but it varies from judges to judge. But just remember that Lina, you just specifically for Drytrons, you should only revive stuff like Gamma. You should revive your opponent's ritual monsters, their own extra deck monsters. Those are the things that you should be focusing on bringing back, not the Veiler. The Veiler is the most common thing that people forget, because they're like, oh, I'll take your Veiler since it's level 1, and then I'll summon out my Drytron monster, overlay the 2 monsters into Mu Beta, throw a card into the graveyard. Wow, such a good play. Yet that is also a very illegal play, and I just want to bring that to your attention, especially Veiler and I guess Golden Lords, sometimes even Ecclesias from time to time. Just these are some of the cards that you just need to know, and I want to make sure you guys have that in your head, because I've made that mistake myself, I think twice, and I don't want you guys to fall for the same crap. So that's really it for burning on, all the chets that you can see from Drytrons in this current format. But what about Sky Striker? There's some fun stuff too. Just the Sky Striker PSA, just remember how you can resolve your cards. Remember, when cards resolve, they do not go to the graveyard immediately. They do not, all right? So when you activate a spell card, when it resolves, it's still on the field, you perform the action, and once the entire chain is complete, that's when things go to the graveyard, which is why when you have 2 spell cards in the graveyard and you activate your Sky Striker Engage, you will only be able to get the search, not the draw, because during resolution, when it is checking for the effect, well, you will only be able to get the search because there's only 2 in the graveyard. And then when the whole chain resolves and is completed, that's when those cards move to the graveyard, and now your Engage is in the graveyard. However, there are certain scenarios where it does change, such as Forbidden Droplets. For Forbidden Droplets sends the Sky Striker Engage into the graveyard, so during resolution, when it checks, Engage is already in the graveyard, so therefore it will count itself, but only if it was sent there by cost before the resolution of the card. That's the only way it can count itself, and it does occur from time to time. I think one of my local players kind of forgot about that, so they're like, oh, my Ego Booster, I activate Ego Booster and it goes to the graveyard, and now I have 3, so therefore my monster cannot be destroyed by battle. But that's not how it works. You have to make sure that you already have 3 in the graveyard to begin with, and that's why it's important to know how cards resolve. And knowing this ruling is actually really important. It's actually a fundamental game mechanic that you should know from basically all your gameplay, because how else does Forbidden Droplet work? When cards are resolving, they do not go to the graveyard one at a time. Everything goes to the graveyard at the same time when the chain finishes, unless there are some costs to be paid moving the card into the graveyard. That's what I want to tell you guys for Sky Strikers. And for Sky Striker, if you want a really deadly move against Drytrons, when you do your end phase, especially when you go second, and you have multi-roll already live, you just go for Shizuku, search for Shark Cannon, activate the Shark Cannon, banish one of the monsters, and then set back that Shark Cannon with multi-roll, so you get to banish 2 cards. So in other words, every Shark Cannon basically acts as a copy of Ally of Justice Cycle Reader. It's really, really powerful. One of the most devastating moves you can do to someone. And on top of that, speaking of like Shark Cannon, one thing to note about Shark Cannon is it cannot revive a monster that did not get properly ritual summoned. So there's a very limited amount of targets that you can summon from a Drytron deck. However, you can summon out Mu Beta. Mu Beta does not have that restriction, as typically Mu Beta does get summoned out properly. So that's one monster that you can Shark Cannon to revive onto your side of the field. or Herald of Ultimateness. Just remember the Shark Cannon does not allow you to attack with that monster, but you know, it's all right. You can still use it as a body to keep yourself alive, especially when they're going for some major damage push. And there are some pretty big ones. That is all I got for this video, guys. If you guys want to help support this channel, check out the merch store. We've got mats, we've got box dividers. If you guys want to sort your collection, it is one of the best tools available out there. New designs are coming as well, and new sleeves are coming as well, so stay tuned for that. I will be doing my draw for my Trisha mat for people that have purchased the Alpha Blue sleeves very soon, so smash that thumbs up button. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys catch these kinds of misplays and get your opponent some procedural errors if it does occur from time to time. And subscribe to MST.TV if you guys want to see more. I'm a bit busy play testing a lot more because YCS is coming up this weekend. And well, wish you guys all best of luck. If you guys top, send me a DM, alright? If you guys got funky ideas as well, send me a DM as well. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one, guys.